Hey, don't give me trouble. I got an answer.
All right, you guys, you're on the air. Welcome to the Tuesday, December 17th, 2013 meeting of the Hot Springs Board of Directors. Our invocation will be led tonight by Mrs. Sarah Harris, to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand with me?
Let us pray. Our kind and loving Heavenly Father, you have been our God throughout the generations, and we praise your holy name. We thank you for your presence in this room. We thank you that you can give wisdom and discernment to our directors, and we ask that you abundantly bless them for the work that they do for the people of our beautiful city. And Father, we thank you for this Christmas season and the time when we can renew our faith and we can celebrate the birth of your Son, Jesus. And it is in his name we pray. Amen.
Man.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I hereby call this meeting to order. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Davidson.
Here.
Jones.
Merry Christmas.
She's not here.
Clark.
Here.
McCabe. Here. Garcia.
Here.
Foley. Here. Carney.
Here. Okay. The first item of business is to consider the approval of the agenda. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda, including any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Mayor,
Yes.
I have one item I'd like to add to the agenda.
Okay.
I'd like to add under the first item under new business, a discussion regarding our options going forward pursuant to the judge's recent ruling on FOIA.
Under new business, right. Or is that old business? Is that new or
Be under
old?
new business.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend or to add to the agenda. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Carney.
Aye.
The amendment passes, Mayor.
Amendment
If you,
passes,
if
yeah.
you can now consider
Yes.
as amended.
Were there any other amendments or additions or deletions? Anything else? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's approved. The second item of business is consider the approval of the minutes of the board meeting for December 3rd, 2013. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions, or modifications to the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, I need a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
All in favor of the motion, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay. Any opposed? No? Okay, the motion is passed. In an effort to afford everyone an equal and orderly opportunity to address the items on tonight's agenda, I want to remind our citizens and our guests that we adhere to a 3-minute limit on your comments, and we'll have a timer in the screen, and we also have a little beeper that goes off up here. Out of respect to all of us, we ask that you honor this request. And while members of the board may have questions of the speakers, I ask that any general comments be reserved until after all the speakers have been heard. And we also ask that you silence all your cell phones and please refrain from any disruptions of the meeting. We ask that you, if your item is over with and you leave early, we ask that you do so quietly without talking with your neighbors. And we do want to thank all of you for being here tonight. We thank you for being concerned about your city and the business of the city and the items that concern your life. And we appreciate your presence here tonight. We thank you for coming. At this time, do we have any guests to be recognized? I don't have anyone down on the list. We'll consider all of you our guests. We thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here. Okay, now we will hear our city manager's report.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Actually on December 6th, as you might remember, we had word of an imminent storm coming in this direction, which, if it had reached its potential, would have created quite a crisis here in Garland County and Hot Springs. And so on Friday morning of that day, we commissioned the operation of our Emergency Operations Center, EOC, at our central fire station, and really had a chance to just observe that, watching the police chief and the fire department and various staff members coordinating preventative measures in case we did have major outages or tree limbs down or roads blocked or icy conditions. And I'm very pleased to say that I think that particular effort worked flawlessly. And I want to thank the fire department, police department, public works, stormwater management, finance, HR. Everybody was there making sure that we protect you, citizens of our community, in case of inclement weather. Also, in keeping with the holiday season, we are nearing the end of our Adopt a Family Fund Drive here in the city. You may remember that we adopted the family of Jennifer Roughton, and including her son-in-law, who both put themselves in harm's way on October 31st, Halloween night, in the Quail Ridge subdivision. She was able to at least attempt to impede the wanton driving of a drunk through that neighborhood that was endangering children. And to her benefit, eventually that person was apprehended by the police, but she had to endure some significant injuries. And so in order to make her family's holiday season bright, our city employees and anonymous donors in the community have contributed a sizable sum of money, and I'll go into that at some point later, maybe later this week or next week, in order to not only provide some cash assistance to help them meet operational expenses, but also to make sure that her family, her 4 children, have as good of a Christmas holiday as you can possibly have. So if you're still interested in donating, please contact my office. I do want to thank all the people in this community who have rallied together to help this family in their time of need. She did something, and her son-in-law did something to protect our children, and so we're giving a gift back to her in appreciation of doing that. Mm-hmm. And so I guess with that, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and look forward to a Happy New Year and a great 2014.
Happy Hanukkah.
Appreciate that. Okay. Do any of our directors have comments concerning upcoming events during the? Karen always does. You always have events. That's wonderful, and you have great events.
As the city manager said, next week is Christmas. So I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And immediately after the New Year, on January 2nd, that's Thursday, at 4:30 p.m. will be a community meeting at the Forest Lakes Clubhouse.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Well, not much going on.
No, there's a lot going on.
Okay. Change the page here. The next item of business is the consideration of the consent agenda. And items in this section are of a routine nature and will be considered as one item of business without discussion. And I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Come moving.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Garcia,
Aye.
Foley,
Aye.
Davidson,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Carney.
Aye.
Adopted.
The consent agenda is adopted. And now we have one item under old business. The next item is to consider resolution number R13270. And council, would you please read the resolution by title?
Resolution R13270, a resolution authorizing the removal of certain parking meters within the downtown Hot Springs area. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you now entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Okay, do I have a motion to adopt?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and discussion from Ms. Yates. Mrs. Yates.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Doretha Yates, Finance Director and Treasurer for the city. And season's greetings to everyone on behalf of the Finance Department. I hope everyone has a great Christmas this year. The item before you is the removal of several parking meters downtown. Purpose of this is to require smoother parking in some areas and encourage downtown business. There are about 247 parking meters that we are asking to be removed. These are on 3 streets: Spring Street, Prospect Street, and also the parking meter in Washita Street. And these areas, Central Street also, I'm sorry, there's 4 streets in the parking deck area. The removals of these meters would take some time, probably not be completed till later on, but they will impact the 2014 revenues. The removal they'll reduce parking meter revenue by about $26,000 annually. As a part of this package, we're also recommending that the parking meter technician position be removed from full-time to part-time. Over the last few months, over the last year, we've removed a number of parking meters in other areas. And with the removal of these meters, we probably have about 50% of the number of parking meters that we have had in the past. Obviously, this decreases the workload associated with those parking meters. If we take the parking meter technician to half-time, that would reduce expense by $20,000 annually. And so the net reduction of this act would be about $6,000. I'd be glad to address any questions that you have.
I think we have a few people signed up, and then we'll give it to the directors to ask. Mr. Norman Clifton.
Mayor, I have not signed up for this.
Oh, okay. Let me be sure, because I was wondering about that. We have 3 signed up for this. I think you may be on the one for the fire code.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that it? Okay, we'll just move you over there. And then we have Mr. Kloss and Mr. Were you signed up, Mr. Kloss, for the
Same.
for the fire code? And you're going to have to help me on your name, Loy.
Wow.
Will you find fire code? Okay, I'll just move all of those over to the other page then. And this will be the issue on parking meters. Did anyone intend to sign up for this issue, parking meters? No one? Okay, all right. Then we'll have. Directors, do you have discussion?
Yeah, but usually you hear my mouth, you never see my hand. I'd like to table this. I'd like to make a motion to table it.
On the parking meters?
Yes.
Okay. I think we just did that, didn't we?
We did, it's up on the agenda tonight. If the board's pleasure is to table it again, you certainly have that prerogative. Is there a time frame that you have in mind to table?
I didn't think of one. 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 6 weeks.
Had you rather just vote it up or down?
No,
Okay. We need a time.
I just gave you one.
You gave us
Gave us
several options.
Last one was 6 weeks.
6 weeks, so 3 meetings,
Yes.
3 meetings hence.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table it. Would you just call the roll on that instead of an aye?
Yeah.
Okay.
Davidson,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
Foley,
Aye.
Carney.
No.
6-1.
All right, we'll wait a while on that one. And we'll go to the next item of business.
Will be what he amended.
Yes.
Okay, the amended item The next item is to consider the amendment, the added, we're on new business.
13.
Yeah, it will be a different item number. Okay, council, would you please, or you want to state that?
I can restate it. I don't know what number you want to assign to it, but as I indicated, I'd like to have a discussion regarding our options going forward pursuant to the recent ruling by the judge on the FOIA case. And I guess the reason I want that is I'm seeking some clarity as to how we conduct business going forward. I read the judge's opinion, and I'm certainly not a lawyer, but I had a hard time understanding where the line was, and I need to know going forward. I think we all deserve to know. We have work sessions on several occasions. We build consensus. We might give direction. Those matters, in my opinion, are not things that we would come back and have to ratify. And so I'm seeking, what are those things that we have to ratify and what things we don't have to, because based on what I'm taking here is that just about everything we do in a work session, we got to come back and ratify. And I don't think that's what his intent is. So I'm trying to determine where the line is.
Okay.
We have a very fine city attorney. He provided some advice, and the judge went the other way. So I think he needs to understand where the line is, if there is, and so we want to do right, and we want to be open and transparent. And by God, all of our meetings are FOIA, and that was the part that caused me other concern, is that it was a lawfully called meeting, and anybody could have attended the meeting. So I'm just trying to find out where the line is.
Okay.
So what are our options, Brian?
I think our attorney should explain to us his concerns on that too.
Director McCabe, I think you've identified the issue. I cannot read the court's order and tell you where the line is, and that's a problem. It's too gray, it's too ambiguous, it's too vague in its reading. I cannot answer that question for you. And for that reason alone, I would recommend that it be appealed. Not having anything to do with public commentary, that's not the issue here at all. The issue is that the judge found there was a lawfully held meeting at Blakely Mountain at the Corps of Engineers office. It was duly publicized. But then he says what happened there violated the FOIA, and I can't reconcile that in my mind or with my legal experience, and so I cannot answer your question.
Well, my comments from 2 weeks ago, I indicated it wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't about whether or not public commentary should be aired. It was a bigger issue. Is what items have to come out of a work session and be ratified. And so, hearing what our city attorney has indicated, and unless there's other discussion, I would make a motion that we authorize Brian, or direct Brian, to appeal this ruling so we can seek clarity.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, and it's open for discussion. I have a question too. If you appeal it as it is, will we get that definition out of it? I mean, will that clarify it, or will a judge just be looking at what happened?
It will be a panel of judges, and typically at the appellate level, it becomes a court of, a reported case that can be used as precedent at that point. This case coming from circuit court has no precedential value for other defendants, but it does have some impact on the city of Hot Springs individually. And in my conversations with 3 of the attorneys at the Municipal League, there is some concern, not just for the city of Hot Springs and city manager forms of government, but the mayor council forms of government as well. There are 500 cities in Arkansas, all of which have meetings to discuss various things. And whether or not those meetings violate the Freedom of Information Act is an issue. In this case, the judge says we did not, but apparently taking a vote there did, or it didn't, or it violated it because we didn't come back and vote again. And so I cannot get my head around it. I would ask that the board authorize filing the appeal just simply for clarification on that. I think that the city of Hot Springs needs it. I think that the other 500 cities need it as well.
Any other have any questions?
Just a question. If I'm understanding it correctly, the basis of the appeal is to get this clarification for work sessions and clarity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. One part of the order says that we had a valid meeting. Another section of the order says that we violated the FOIA. I don't know how you can have a valid meeting and violate FOIA.
They were in conflict with each other is what
Yes.
you're saying?
Yes.
You want to explain a little bit further that the appeal is not about the issue?
Yeah,
It's about the procedures?
Sure, yeah, I just mentioned that. I'm not asking that this be appealed at all, having to do with the public commentary. The public commentary issue is within the purview of the board, and you all took a vote on that last week, and that issue has been put to rest. That was the reason that it was brought, but that's not the reason that I would want to appeal it. Simply would want to appeal it based on the inconsistency in the order with respect to freedom of information, what can be done at a work session, what can't be done at a work session, what has to be ratified, and when.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one. Work sessions, are they different for mayor, city council, alderman form of government versus city manager form of government? Because the aldermen hire, fire, make decisions about daily routines and workings of a city government, so
No.
that wouldn't have any difference. Okay.
The mayor, in a mayor-alderman form of government, makes all personnel decisions. So you could have a setting where there is a work session of some sort. Maybe it was to discuss how many times they're going to bush hog ditches, and there's a discussion on the side where 3 or 4 aldermen are complaining about the sanitation services. And the next thing you know, the mayor has fired the sanitation director. Is that something that should have come to a vote? It's under the purview of the mayor to do that. The discussion that we're having this evening is an example of this. By ordinance, city attorney takes charge of all litigation. I have independent authority already to appeal this. What kind of an idiot would I be to take action without the blessing of the board? I'm not going to step out in front of you and presume that that's what you want me to do. So I'm seeking your guidance in that regard. Had we done that at a work session and you said, yes, Brian, exercise your authority to appeal this case, did that violate FOIA because you didn't come back again in a business setting and vote on it? I don't know. When I read this, I have no idea.
Yes, sir.
I think this goes beyond just the cities. It goes to the county governments as well. All the quorum courts, they sit down and have committee meetings and at least express the desire of the quorum court in terms of a direction without resolution. They just say, we think this is the way we want to go, whether it's putting redesigning the jail or whatever it is. And every time they have that discussion under this ruling, it would seem that they have to go back and publicly ratify it. It would bring everything to a grinding halt. This just seems like bad public policy.
I agree with you entirely. Under the FOIA, and this is what this case was about, it says that we violated FOIA. It doesn't say that we violated any other statute, any other procedure, any other policy or guideline that exists for the city of Hot Springs. It says that we violated the FOIA. FOIA says you must have open meetings. We had an open meeting. That's all FOIA says. All meetings must be open. It was a meeting. You can put any label you want to, retreat, workshop, work session, dinner on the ground, whatever. It was a meeting. And we had to publicize the meeting, and we did so. You cannot have meetings in secret to make decisions. This was not a meeting that was in secret. It was duly published.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Davidson.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Carney.
Aye. Okay, it passes. The next item of business is to consider resolution number R13-271. Council, would you please read the resolution by title?
Resolution R13-271, a resolution adopting a budget for the City of Hot Springs, Arkansas for the year 2014. That concludes the reading. You would now entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Do I have a motion
So
to
moved.
adopt? Is there a second? We have a motion and a second, and Doretha, you're back.
Thank you, Mayor. Arkansas law requires us to adopt a budget each year. The matter before you tonight is to adopt a budget for the year 2014. The budget that we're adopting is $98.3 million. The expense budget is about $99.3 million. In addition, you're authorizing 613 full-time positions and 10 part-time positions. We've been through a number of work sessions on the budget, so obviously I'm not going to belabor what all is in that budget. There is a one-time 2% lump sum payment for employees in that budget. That is the one thing probably that gets the most attention. The greatest asset that the city has is its employees. And so we would certainly like to have been able to adopt a permanent 2% increase, but we weren't able to do that. When we looked at the financial situation, we felt like the 2% one time was the best for the financial health of the city. If you have any other questions, I'd be glad to address those.
Any questions for Doretha? Well, we'll have public comment, and then we'll come back to you with the Board of Directors. Okay, Denise Marion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm Denise Marion. I'm the chairperson of the Garland County Hot Springs Beautification Commission, and I'm here with other members of the commission. Rick Bonte, who's the owner of City Plumbing, Heating, and Electric, is our vice chair, and Jessica Bott is our secretary, and I'm here with Kelsey Ramsey, our program director. I'm here to speak in favor of the changes to the commission funding that the city manager has been recommending. And the reason for that is that the mission of the Beautification Commission was established 30 plus years ago during the Herbert Walker Bush administration. It was one of his 1,000 points of light, which was to mobilize volunteers to take action on urgent environmental and community projects around the country. And the Beautification Commission is beloved like a beloved uncle. It's hard for me to introduce myself to someone in this community and say I'm the chairperson of the Beautification Commission and not have them reply with some experience they've had with the Beautification Commission. But that uncle has been on the job for 30 years, and times have changed. Now we're confronted by other broader environmental issues that the commission has no responsibility or authority to even address. Ordinance, I believe it's 3866 that created the commission, says our responsibility is solely cleanliness, beauty, and the education around those things. And to that, we are to mobilize volunteers to tackle projects and advise and work with and consult with the city and the county. Funding was equal at that time. As you know, there's a great disparity in funding right now. And not only is the mission really not broad enough for what we would like to do now, we're not really able to do it effectively with the funding that we have now. The county cut back our funding by half. I think it was 2008. We gave up our office, moved in for free at the Mid-America Science Museum, where they've offered us office space. Adam Roberts was adept at getting soft money so that we could continue our good works. But the way funding is now, it's just not possible for us. So we welcome incorporation of these broader environmental concerns into the county, and I do have a request. I know my time is up, but I do have a request.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I can address that after
Yeah.
George.
Mr. Pritchett.
Get 210 Carl Drive, District 5. I read the budget. I'm just concerned that year after year after year we ignore all the general fund capital needs. It appears our only solution to anything is if we just raise taxes on the people. And whether we do it through a higher sales tax rate, we keep the penny rolling when the jail tax expires, I don't know. But you have 50% of your people or more living near or below the poverty level in this city, and they're already struggling. They've tightened their belts just about all they can tighten them. You have on your agenda tonight to give a 2% raise to our deserving employees. And I use the word deserving because I think they deserve it. But the federal government set a target in 2013 of 2% inflation. Our inflation's only going to come in, according to the CPI, at 1.2%. So we're giving a 2% raise to people, and it's not a question if they're deserving, because I believe they are. But our community has a high number of unemployed that have already exceeded all the benefits. So when we look at our job numbers, we're not taking those into consideration. We're balancing our budget by reducing our cash reserves. Why don't we take that money and put it in a capital reserve account and start building? You've got a $3 million obligation that's going to hit you between the eyes to tear down that math and science building up there. And when you start asking for more taxes, you're going to be hit back between the eyes by a public that's going to reject it. And I know this board can impose a property tax, but if you impose a property millage tax, I suspect you won't be reelected if you vote for that. This board, your predecessors promised that you would not do that when you got the sales tax. So here we are again talking about all of those things. Now, our citizens inside the city limits are Hot Springs. Y'all need to drive around. There's some people that are very affluent in our city, but we have a majority that are not that affluent. I think that we probably need to start looking at how to make a capital reserve fund, and we need to start something, 2% or 3% a year, and ask our department heads to reduce. I asked our police chief a few years ago, would you reduce if everyone else did? He said yes. Now, that was Bobby Southard. That's not Chief Flory. Chief Flory told me he could get us an emergency radio system somewhere in the 6 to 8, not the 24 to 26 that's been in the paper. And then a couple of years ago, we came back after we gave bonus and gave raises also after a number of years that we hadn't given them. And I don't disagree that they were justified, but we're asking too much from our public. In reference to a statement that was made about the quorum court, as a former member, we never made a decision in committee. We voted to move something from the committee to go in front of the people. And at our regular scheduled meeting, the full quorum court, and we voted. Not a single issue ever came out of the quorum court committee that was an action item until it came before them. We also never held meetings away from the location. We held all our meetings there. If you had 80 people show up at that Blakely meeting, it would be impossible for you to conduct your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And would you like to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to expand a little bit on Denise Marion's point. I guess since I do have the TV, I wanted to go on record as saying that I participated in an interview last week and mistakenly implied that the 24 members of the Beautification Commission were employees, and that's not accurate. We have one employee, a very able employee, but the beautification members are volunteers and contribute hundreds of hours to their projects. And then secondly, I do think it's an exciting time to kind of refocus what we're doing with beautification, at least on the city side. And I met with a committee today that's represented here, and I'm going to recommend that we utilize their input as we formulate this new direction of looking at water conservation and walkability and sustainable projects and recycling that we're already doing, because they all kind of fit together. And I welcome the opportunity to work with you, Denise, and your fellow officers. Thanks.
Anything else to say before we open it up to the directors for questions?
No.
Okay. Okay, now, do we have any discussion from our directors? Any questions about the budget? Yes, sir?
Madam Mayor, when we talk about the budget, I'm sure everybody on this board has heard me say that I'd like to see the budget become like a business budget because it's difficult to understand. If we go back and take a look at 2013 and the performance relative to cost control and revenue growth has been stellar. The fund balance has increased in almost every department, not every department, but in almost every department. And people have a tendency to confuse cash with fund balance. Mm-hmm. And so if there is any way that we can, in the future, present our budget that also includes anticipated but not insured revenue, like we have in every other business when we budget, it would, I think, give a better picture to the public in terms of how our budget performance really ends up at the end of the year. The reason that, it's my understanding that the reason we don't recognize all the revenue is because we may get grants that we know we have applied for, but we're not assured of it, so we don't put it in the revenue side of the budget, which means that we're almost always going to have a deficit budget, and the public perceives that as something that says, well, you're always running in the black, and that really is not the case, because at the end of the year, our fund balance continues to increase. So I would hope that at least with the next budget that we can express our budget in terms of what is our anticipated revenue, and if we don't get it, the advantage to expressing it that way is if we don't get that revenue, we're in a position immediately to modify expenses to meet the lack of revenue. So that's the only comment I make. I think the budget presentation we give to the public puts a very good job, well done, in a bad light. And so going forward, I'd like to see if we can address that.
Okay.
Good point.
Did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I'll piggyback on some of your comments, Director. This 2013 budget was a deficit budget. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct on
And we're
paper.
ending up with in the black, not in the red. So we have a very favorable variance because we're going to end the year with over $300,000 where we had anticipated quite a bit in deficit the other way. And this year, the budgeting is for the general fund is reflecting over a $800,000 deficit. But it's my understanding that about $400,000 of that is coming from the reserve for capital. Is that correct?
You want to come back, Doretha, just in case up here.
We have a we estimate our savings on our salary for about $400,000. That's what we put salaries in the budget as though they were fully funded all year long. We have a number of vacancies throughout the years, especially in the police department. So we have taken those savings that we anticipate and put those in the budget, about $400,000. Also, there is $300,000 that we are moving in from fund balance from prior years, like for the employee increases or for capital, whichever you'd like to put that. But there's $700,000 in there.
But the employee increase, so it was a one-time.
That's a one-time
special pay,
yes.
Not a raise to the base salaries.
Right.
But of the capital needs in the general fund, part of that is being financed.
Yes, that's
and
correct.
And then, isn't it around $400,000 that we're taking from reserve to fund the remainder
correct.
of that capital?
That's correct.
So we still don't have a CIP fund. In effect, what we are doing and what we've done in the past is take money from our general fund reserve to use for the capital planning. And I would like to see us have the CIP fund so we know we have these replacements and we have critical needs that we need to be making more progress on. And as we're looking at the budget and what the needs are, what is best for the people of Hot Springs and how does it align with our goals of Hot Springs, and looking at what's needed for public safety and our water, sewer, stormwater, and street paving. And we're going to be spending millions of dollars with upcoming, we're issuing the bonds, so we've got important projects to meet the requirements of our administrative consent order. And I would really like to see us move forward with the CIP. We've got public safety needs with the fire. I mean, I don't know what we're looking down the road for what's needed in the fire department. It keeps being put off for the needs there. And I know the fire station on Golf Links is in need a lot of work or reconstruction, repair, or a new fire station, and as well as the airport. And we've been talking about the communication equipment since I joined the board, and I'm concerned about our public safety there. So if, as a board, and we could have direction to have the CIP become one of our, and it is one of our goals. I mean, that's what we identified as a board as one of our top goals, along with water and sewer. And we've been without a utilities director for the second half of the year, and hopefully we're close to getting one. But at our budget meeting last week, it was mentioned that it's difficult to find the person to come here because we provide service for water and sewer outside the city. That's why we have that many employees, because our utilities service the county as well as the city. And we're going to be spending these millions of dollars, and we need to make sure that we have the management and leadership in place. And I have some concerns about, in our budget, about our organization to ensure we're putting the money we spend in the right places. I still remember joining the board and the issue we had with Jacob's contract and having that canceled, and we want to make sure that we don't do that or have the right management there, and we want to put the money there if it's needed, because we've got to have experienced people, and we can't have one person and work them to death, as has been occurring. So I do have some concern if our organization is putting the money in the right places.
Okay. Is there any adjustment you want to make?
Tell
or
you
is-
that those comments surprise me because we all have an opportunity to express our disappointment or our concern or any disagreement we have relative to the direction the city takes and how we're getting there. It's my understanding that we have a plan. You know, going back a little bit, out of fairness to the city management, even before our current city manager, we were on tough times since 2008, just like every citizen in this community. And so in battening the hatches, I mean, we didn't have the money and still don't have all the money we need for capital improvements. But in 1 year's time, we have made tremendous strides in the amount of capital we have been able to acquire, whether it's through short-term financing, and still end up with a positive fund balance that a year ago most people didn't feel like we could even get. So I am not concerned at all about where the city is spending the money, because when we set our strategic direction and asked the budget to match the strategic direction, that's what happened. And so I'm a little surprised to hear concerns now.
Well, it's not something brand new. I have sent this out, but you weren't at the work session.
Right.
And this was discussed because it was brought up that I asked if we had the right amount of money in the utilities to attract the skills and experience that's needed. And if we are having trouble getting a qualified person that has the sewer and the water experience, do we need 2 people? And if we need those positions, I think we should look at that.
All I'm saying is we've entrusted the management to the city manager, and I have no reason to not support that now, because the history has demonstrated that we've been very successful, at least in my short term on this board.
I'm just saying if they need more there, because
Did you have your hand up? Okay, was there any other comments? No? Okay. Hearing no other comments, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Garcia.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
Carney.
Aye.
Adopted.
Okay, it is adopted. I think we need to also make it very clear that, you know, it can be adjusted all year long. As we get into it, we can bring different issues back and readjust. Is that possible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Get them in the budget.
That's what I'm asking. During the year, if there's an area that's lacking, we can
Way too much.
work with that?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. The next item of business is to consider an ordinance amending the fire prevention code of the City of Hot Springs to create and establish a thermal basin fire department and for other purposes. So do we have a staff member?
Mayor, actually what you need is a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read that.
Okay, that wasn't on
I
here.
so move.
Okay.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and read by title only. We have a motion and a second. Would you please read?
To vote on it.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
Davidson.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Aye.
Carney.
Ordinance 01381, an ordinance amending the Fire Prevention Code of the City of Hot Springs, Arkansas, Ordinance 5668 as amended to create and establish a thermal basin fire district and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you now entertain a motion and a second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Do we have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to adopt and discussion. Would that be, Chief, are you going to do this discussion part or someone else?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
My name is Edward Davis, and I'm the Fire Chief of the City of Hot Springs. Madam Mayor, Directors, thank you for allowing me to come before you tonight to bring this proposal to you. What we're recommending is that you establish what we're referring to as the Thermal Basin Fire District in downtown Hot Springs. As you can see up on your monitor, there is an area that is colored in yellow, and there are also smaller areas within each of the districts that are outlined that represent the historic districts that are within downtown Hot Springs. That would be the Whittington Valley, the Central Avenue, the Pleasant Street, the Bathhouse, and also the Quapaw Prospect. Each of these contains the crown jewels architecturally of the city of Hot Springs. Unfortunately, this is also the area that has seen the worst fires in the history of the city of Hot Springs. The 1905 fire that we had that burned 30 blocks, the 1913 fire that burned 60 blocks, the Arlington Hotel fire, the Marquette Hotel fire, numerous forest fires in the national park, and also the Beauregard fire in the 1980s, where we had more than 10 lives that were lost in that fire. So each of these districts contains tragedies that have occurred due to fire. And fire has been the greatest nemesis to the city of Hot Springs throughout its entire history. It's changed our economic strata in ways that none of us can ever imagine. Can you imagine the devastation that was wrought by a fire that burned 60 square blocks in this same area? It forever changed lives. Changed the lives of the firemen that were there. You know, you listen to the legends that come out of the things that they said, the things that they saw, the people, the stories that have played out, the lives that were ruined, and economic hardship that was visited on even the common man. It was a terrible time, one that we do not want to ever repeat in the city of Hot Springs. To this end, Hot Springs Fire Department is recommending that we establish a special code district. The special code district would have life safety as its core. In other words, we want to make sure that all of the buildings that are within the thermal district have the ability to be able to be occupied, but be occupied in a safe manner. And you ask, why would this be such a difficult proposal? It is a difficult proposal in many instances because a large number of our multi-story historic buildings have been declared unsafe. Unsafe because of means of egress problems, unsafe because of open shafts, unsafe because of many, many issues. Not just code issues, but sometimes sanitary issues, even issues that might occur that would threaten the property of someone else. So from this standpoint, what Hot Springs Fire Department would like to do is propose to you that we establish a more lenient code, a code that would be designed to be able to foster the rehabilitation of these buildings in the most economically feasible manner possible. Well, how can you do that with a 100-year-old building that has been declared unsafe? And that's a great question. It's a question that's puzzled many people in communities throughout the United States of America. The way that you do this is you find what's worked somewhere else and you replicate it here. And what has worked in many other towns around the United States that have a profile historically that's similar to Hot Springs is the adoption of a special code. That special code that we have found is referred to as the existing building code. And what the existing building code does, it allows you to be able to cover a multitude of architectural and life safety sins by the addition of a fire sprinkler system and by the addition of proper means of egress within the building. Not perfect means of egress, but proper means of egress, the best you can do. We've got some great examples of that have already occurred in buildings in Hot Springs. If you're ever up on Fountain Street, you can look on the back side of the Arlington Hotel and you see some of the things that have been done in cooperation with the Arlington on making that building safe. Metal staircases have been added to the exterior of the building. So what we've done with the Arlington over the last decade is work with them to make that building as safe as possible, to make that building a place where people can come to. And if there is a fire, the fire alarm system in the Arlington will go off, the fire doors would shut, and there would be a way for people to get out of the building. What we're proposing is not the same thing for these buildings. No, we're actually proposing something lesser. Just install sprinkler systems, get proper means of egress, and then as far as the life safety issues, those things would be covered. All of these would be applied, these special codes would be applied to these buildings within the thermal basin. And all of them would be done fairly. Many of the buildings within the thermal basin would not fall under this because they've not been declared unsafe. But should someone decide they want to change the occupancy in those buildings, should someone decide they want to make modifications to those buildings, the building code of the state of Arkansas would not be applied to them. The existing building code, a lesser code, a code designed for the rehabilitation of existing structures, would be the tool that we would be using to make modifications such as change of occupancy or changes in means of egress corridors, things of that matter. The Thermal Basin Fire District is something that, from our standpoint, is the best solution to the issues of unsafe buildings in downtown Hot Springs. Unsafe buildings are kind of a problem throughout the United States. And I'll read you real quick what the code says about it. And this is in the Arkansas Fire Code. Structures or existing equipment that are hereafter become unsafe or deficient because of inadequate means of egress or which constitute a fire hazard or are otherwise dangerous to human life or public welfare or which involve illegal or improper occupancy or inadequate maintenance shall be deemed in an unsafe condition. A vacant structure which is not secured against unauthorized entry shall be deemed unsafe. Abatement. The owner, operator, or occupant of a building or premises deemed unsafe by the fire code shall abate or cause to be abated or corrected in such unsafe condition, either by repair, rehabilitation, demolition, or other approved corrective action. Our problem is that many of these buildings, when we began to have code issues with them, were basically abandoned. They were taken out of occupancy, they were taken out of use, and they were sealed up. And although this is better than the current use at that time, it does not meet the tenets of the code. We have allowed something to go on in the community that, frankly, is illegal. We have allowed unsafe buildings to continue to be unsafe. And the code clearly says structures or existing equipment which are or hereafter become unsafe or deficient because of inadequate means of egress or which constitute a fire hazard or otherwise dangerous to human life or public welfare, or which involve illegal or improper occupancy or inadequate maintenance shall be deemed unsafe. It's a simple issue. The buildings are unsafe. The issues must be abated. The easiest way to abate the problem is to apply the existing building code. The existing building code has less requirements than the current building code, which is Arkansas Fire Prevention Code Volume 2. To try and rehabilitate a historic building using the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code Volume 2 will be prohibitive, and it can't be done really in an economically feasible manner. But the application of the existing building code, this new code, a lesser code that still has life safety at its core, allows those buildings to have a chance.
You're confusing me with one word.
Yes, ma'am.
Existing.
Yes, ma'am, and I understand that. The existing building code is not something that is currently adopted in the 3-volume set of Arkansas Code. The Arkansas State Fire Marshal has sent me a letter, and he is allowing us to adopt that in downtown Hot Springs. And there's actually a small entry in the 2012 Fire Code that allows that to occur. And so basically Hot Springs is being treated in a special way because of what you have in your downtown.
Would you explain just a little bit about what the other existing code is, that one that won't be existing if
that
this
would be
one's
the building code, the Arkansas building code. Here's the difference. If we apply the building code to those buildings downtown for their rehabilitation, that would mean that we would have to have proper separation between the floors, proper separations between the tenant spaces, proper separation between the exit corridors, the addition of 1 3/4 solid core or fire doors throughout the entire thing. We would have to go, and all of the vertical shafts would have to be enclosed under a 1-hour fire protection enclosure, and then you would also have to sprinkle the building. So basically what we're saying is get proper means of egress, get a sprinkler system, and you don't have to worry about all that other stuff. Boiling it down into layman's terms.
Okay. All right. Okay, we have lots of people signed up before we start asking questions, and then we'll probably call you back for answering the questions.
Madam Mayor, do we ask questions of the presenter now, or?
No, after this, and then we have our chance after we hear
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Fram.
Thank you, members of the council. I'd like to take just a minute, if I could. Like many city councils across the country, you all have a lot of meetings. I don't know how you go to all of them. You make decisions that impact the lives of our citizens, and very rarely do those decisions meet the favor of every citizen. So it's a tough job, and I want to thank you, all of you, for your service and the decisions that you have to make. I think it's important with this issue to talk about our strategy for economic development, and one of the components, one of the 4 primary components of that economic development strategy has to do with downtown development. And I think it's important for you to know some of the things that we have upcoming as a part of that plan in 2014. We have already interviewed and plan to name and hire an intern from one of our local colleges that will start soon after the first of the year, who will go through this district that Fire Chief Davis has shown you, and interview and survey property owners to find out specifics about the building, to find out interest in development, interest in possible sales, interest in possible redevelopment. And at the end of this project, we hope to have a database of information throughout this district for those buildings and for both current property owners and potential developers. This intern is going to work very closely with Kathy Selman and her office and with city officials here. The other thing that we're doing is we've begun some discussions with the Arkansas Department of Heritage to talk about providing some education to current building owners and current property owners about how they can access and use historic tax credits to minimize some of the expense in going forward and meeting some of these obligations should they change occupancy or should they change ownership of some of these buildings. We're also in the process of exploring best practices by other communities and putting together consortiums of local financial institutions to provide either low interest or no interest financing for some of these improvements going forward. And then lastly, late in the spring of 2014, we plan an invitation to a developer consultant showcase, which will include a lot of areas in Hot Springs, but will also include some of the buildings that are on the market downtown. I'd like to close by complimenting Chief Davis for his work on this. He has certainly not developed this in a vacuum. He has certainly not developed it alone. He has not developed it in a hurry. He has met with a lot of people. I'm aware of most of the people that he has consulted with to put this together. And I think the most important thing is he has allowed or has proposed allowing what I would call a very progressive timetable for property owners, both current property owners and possible future property owners, to meet this requirement and meet this time schedule. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And let me just ask you a question. That was all real fast. You had 3 minutes, but we can ask you questions, so
Sure.
that doesn't count. So you said you're...
Oh, we couldn't.
Yeah, he's signed up to speak.
Oh, well, he just asked.
That was different. That was for the presenter, who is the staff
okay.
person. Okay, so you have several options for people who can't afford to do this to their own property. Is that what you were saying? You're talking with bankings and loan companies, maybe low interest or no interest. Is that...
We are looking at some best practice scenarios of what some other communities have done in the same situation with their downtowns in being able to put together a partnership or a consortium of interested local financial institutions that would either put together a low interest or no interest fund to help with some of these improvements. There's also some very complex components of the historic tax credit laws, and we have had some conversation with the Department of Arkansas Heritage about providing locally some education programs for both current and potential future property owners on how they might access some of those. Yes.
So you have resources that we don't even really know about, that you will make available as it's needed, and we can work with different groups to help funding. So
that's correct, and it's kind of a work in progress.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question for him? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Don Schnipper, is that the way you say it?
Mayor, members of the board, I'm Don Schnipper. I'm an attorney here in Hot Springs. I'm here representing Ken Wheatley today. Mr. Wheatley's out of town, and he sends his regrets for not being here, but he has penned a letter, and I don't normally read to anybody, courts, boards, anybody else, but I'm going to read his words just so you'll know this is from Mr. Wheatley, all right? He says, I was first told of this proposal a few months ago and was asked, would I fight this? Odd question, since I specifically asked, would I be required to sprinkle the vacant upper floors of buildings that had great roofs and were clean and secure? I was told absolutely not. We've been told a major motivation for this district was the fact the city had to tear down the Majestic at a cost of $2 million because the owner let it go. There's been no fire at the Majestic. Sprinklers would have done nothing. The roof was compromised and the city did nothing. So why is it being used as a scare tactic and a reason to force people to sprinkle? We've been told the fire in the woods on the mountain years ago is a reason. It was not a result of a building fire. Also, why I was told the Arlington would be grandfathered as it adjoins the mountain. We've been told the trucks can't get to the backs of the buildings, and yet Whippoorwill Street is platted behind the buildings and remains undone, although it's been requested year after year. I was told twice that safe, clean buildings would be exempt, only to be told the third time that powerful forces want the downtown developed and they're trying to use the board to try and force it. We've been told that there were fires in 1913 and 1925 and that the basis of this current request was from an inspection done in the 1980s. The property owners have spent millions since the 1980s. You may not know it, but it was the property owners who paid for the sidewalks, street lamps, benches, trees, and flowers in the downtown, not the city. We've been told you could just pass the cost on to the next buyer of the building, but that's foolish. They would have to completely redo the system based on their design and use. This legislation has been done quietly with no public hearing. It is one of the most arbitrary proposals I've ever seen. The decision to sprinkle is up to whomever in the city deems a building not safe and sanitary. I've heard from virtually every building owner who would be affected, and they feel their buildings are safe. The burden on them will physically bankrupt many of them. The economy is such that there's no pot of gold to draw from, and trying to gain control of a property through legislation is wrong. These buildings are safe, but they're not just developed the way a few people would like, and it's wrong to allow them to force their will on others for their personal gain. I ask that you talk to the merchants in the downtown personally before you consider affecting their lives and pass this ordinance. Thank you, Ken Wheatley. Mayor, that's Mr. Wheatley's words, not mine.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
representing him. Anthony Taylor.
I'm Anthony Taylor, 111 Newtonwood. I also am an owner of a building in Central Avenue at 210, one that we recently installed a fire sprinkler system in. We borrowed the money to put in that sprinkler system. The resulting business that occupied that building more than covers the note. There are 10 new employees in the city due to that, another new establishment there that people seem to really like. The International Building Code is the Volume 2 of the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code. It requires certain occupancies to have a fire sprinkler system. Many of the buildings downtown, I think probably all of the buildings downtown that would be affected by this new code would be affected by that code also. They would have to have sprinkler systems installed were they to be developed. The current Hot Springs Vacant Structures Code was established in order for one multiple building property owner to board up his buildings and utilize only the ground floor. That has held the development of the city of Hot Springs back for over 25 years. Nothing is going to happen downtown unless and until some development happens with these buildings. The safest way to allow the buildings to continue as they are is what Chief Davis has proposed. Yes, it's costly. Yes, there needs to be help for people who can't afford it. You have a long list of property owners signed up here that are going to come speak about how this would adversely affect them financially. But I think our example shows that if you step out and actually do something, you get that reward back, and it helps the city out. It's a good thing for the city. I fully support this, and I hope that you will also. I'm aware of one of the property owners here tonight who's trying to develop his building, and he's doing it, in a slow, methodical way. It would be very costly for him to install a sprinkler system, but it would allow him to then fully occupy that building. Were there a financing mechanism for him to do that, I think that he would probably take that on. Some of the other property owners, I think, are probably satisfied to simply utilize the ground floor of their buildings and go on about their business. And that's really not in the best interest of the city of Hot Springs. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Renee Tompkins.
You could drink all the coffee.
My name is Renee, and I have 2 businesses downtown. I have Bare Necessities, which used to be a teddy bear shop, and Putting on the Glitz, that's a high-end clothing store. 2 years ago, my roof blew off, and Ken Wheatley invested a large amount of money trying to put it back together, and I lost $85,000 in my store. I was eating lunch at Longhorn Steakhouse, and Ken come up to me, and he said, if this ordinance passes, it's not going to be good because he won't pay for it, and he won't. Okay, so that means I'm out of business. My 7 employees are out of business. I have a husband with Alzheimer's, and we've been renting that building for 17 years. When our store went down, we had people standing outside begging us to go back in business. Hot Springs is not a Starbucks. We're not an Old Navy. We're just merchants trying to make a living. It's a struggling business. We're doing the best we can downtown. I travel all over the United States pulling a truck and trailer, trying to supplement my income downtown. This has affected 2 other businesses because we all know what will happen. Our landlord will only put out what he can put out. To get my building up and running again, how we did it, I don't know. It took many man-hours and everything to put those stores back like they needed to be. If this happens, this will put me out of business, and I know that. I know I will be the first building. I'm 3-4 stories tall. And I was told that's what would happen. But then it's going to affect all the other business owners too. Because one, we don't have a lease. We go from month to month, all of us. We know that our days are numbered, but we just try to make a living in our buildings. And Ken has backed us up 100% in any way. But this is as far as Ken can be pushed. He will not do it. And I just want you to think of the people that this will affect. It will affect many people. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for coming. Louis Clement.
Hello, we also have a business downtown, and we've heard the Chamber of Commerce and the architect talk as if development was already planned for downtown. We barely knew about this thing, and as you must know, Ken Wheatley owns a lot of these buildings, and he cannot afford to put sprinkler systems in every building. And if you ask him to do that, you'll basically be kicking out all the tenants that are below him. And that would not be fair without a lot more discussion about how to help him do it, because it's not fair to kick everybody out. We have a unique downtown, and you need to try and preserve it instead of just buying onto this. We're looking for new developers. We got it all set up. We got a development program set for next year, because they're already planning ahead before you pass this ordinance. And you tabled a motion earlier for 6 weeks. This should be tabled for 6 months until you can really figure out how to, if you're going to make Ken do it, show him how to do it, help him do it, so you don't just kick everybody out. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Peggy Thurman.
Good evening. Peggy Thurman, 133 Circle Drive, District Number 1. First of all, you're all here to represent the people, all of you. That includes the businesses and the people that own businesses and people that rent. And I've been meeting with the Chamber for many, many, many years to devise a way that would be affordable to develop the upstairs. I met with the other president of the chamber is no longer here. They had a plan, they had a plan, they had a plan. A lot of it concerned, and this is all my personal opinion, okay, how to change ownership downtown because somebody was keeping the city from developing. Well, I don't own a hotel, and I did not inherit downtown. I've got a little bitty building, and I was charged for all the improvements that other people made. Yes, there is not a lot of respect in the city of Hot Springs for public opinion, and that is why you spent the last meeting discussing public comment. Targeting is illegal. You cannot target somebody, but you can broad brush with an ordinance that would basically squeeze out people and their businesses that would appear to be for the betterment of Hot Springs. I'm very, 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 very much in favor of public safety and the fire code. In fact, this is like deja vu. Mr. Anthony Taylor was here telling me in 1993 that I just didn't understand that there was nothing that would burn at the Math and Science School because they too they weren't sprinkled, and they received a CO, a certificate of occupancy. After getting all the permits and finding all the people that refused to sign and other people signed for them and going to the governor, we got the place sprinkled. And it flourished, and now we've got a new building, and now you've got the problem of tearing down the old one. The Arlington Hotel, in my personal opinion, is the crown jewel of the entire city. However, it is not going to be required to be sprinkled. I don't believe there's a sprinkler system in there. It's something that a lot of people have known, and they've kept it very quiet because everybody loves the Arlington. I go to the Arlington. But there are people that are going to be sleeping in there. Do they know that the Arlington does not have any sprinklers? And this is 2013, almost 2014. They have used the Majestic Hotel as the poster child for safety. The city and the person that owned it has allowed it to crumble. And that is the very same person, I believe, that is going to be grandfathered in from having to sprinkle their building. That is not protecting the mom and pops. That is squeezing out a certain person from having control of downtown. That is not right. And it's hurting the little people. The little people are the people that have been here today saying, please don't close our store. And that's what's going to happen. Please do not pass this. Please review this and make it affordable for the people so they can develop.
Thank you.
And the natural process will take effect. There will be new investment and development. Don't do this to the little people.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Norman Clifton.
May I rebut that?
Yeah, you may. Just 1 second, Mr. Clifton. He wanted to.
The Arlington Hotel has never been declared as an unsafe structure. The Arlington Hotel, no matter what people might think about them, whenever we send them a letter that says you must comply, they comply. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about, a 10-story means of egress fire tower that they have to install on the backside, or redoing their standpipe system, or redoing their fire alarm system. All of these 24, 25 buildings that we're talking about were all back in the 1980s. A decision was made not to comply with the code. And the Arlington Hotel has never sent such a letter to the fire department saying we're not going to apply.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Clifton?
Thank you, Mayor, City Directors. I received a letter from the fire department dated December the 3rd outlining or telling me about this meeting. And I called to find out about it as I didn't get a copy of the ordinance that you were proposing or or anything else. I had no way of knowing what it was, so I called. And I was told that my existing building, it's the old Hal DeSoto Hotel at 201 Central. And I was told that I would have to install a sprinkler system in that building. And it just devastated me. I bought that building about 5 or 6 years ago and spent many thousands of dollars getting it to a point to where it was enclosed, new roof on it, had the asbestos abated out of it, everything that needed to be done to comply with the existing code. So we did all that, and we continue. Whenever code calls me and tells me someone has broken into my building and broke a window out or busted a door open, I got to get it fixed. We do that. And we comply with all that. So finally, we got a tenant, and he moved in on the bottom floor. We sealed off the rest of the building, completely sealed off, completely enclosed, everything. Now, I don't want to repeat what everybody else has said, but Mr. Wheatley pretty well expressed everything that I had notations to make. One thing I'd like to find out about is, has there been any public hearings on this except tonight? You've passed the rules and brought it up for the third reading, or the second reading, tonight, so is this the only time that it's been heard by the city? Well, I don't hardly think that's fair in giving the people anywhere near enough time to try to find out what's even in the ordinance. The other thing y'all are talking about, you just talked about a budget. You're talking about a capital improvement fund. Well, that's wonderful. You know, y'all can do that. And just like the man in the red sweater says, you know, if you need something, carry the penny over. I don't know how much it brings in to you, but you have ways that y'all can do your capital improvement fund. People that own property down here, we don't have that available to us. Mr. Davis eloquently stated everything that the national, state, city fire codes like to do, and that's all well and fine, but please keep that in mind, that is municipalities, and it's governed by taxes, and we are not governed by taxes except that we have to pay for what y'all put on us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cross.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Duke Kloss. I live at 1011 Central Avenue. I own 10 buildings in Hot Springs that will be affected by the ordinance. One of them's a 14-foot wide, tiny little building, and the other ones are big buildings. And all the money we make comes out of the little building. 5 years ago, I decided we should protect the little building and looked into sprinkling that to protect it. It seemed like a good idea. Ed thinks it's a good idea and says it'll cure all of our problems and all we have to do is sprinkle the buildings. So I called the sprinkler outfit and said, got a little building, couple thousand square feet, come on down to Hot Springs and put some pipes in. So what side of the street are you on, sir? Well, I'm on the east side. Well, the water main is on the west side. And before we do anything, we have to jack that thing across the street, and that's $20,000 before we put in the first pipe. And then I don't want to tell you what the rest of it's going to cost. Pretty much by then, I'd grab my heart and wrestle myself down to the ground and tried to forget about it. Let me just say that I wish Mr. Wheatley had written my speech, and it's nice to give a speech here where the mayor doesn't boo you afterwards. Like last time I was here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, sir. I'll try again. Longhua, is that it? Will you say it for me so I can hear you?
My name is Longhua Xu, and I'm come to the United States like almost 25 years. And I bought a building in the downtown was only the shell. And I spent like 10 years and put this building back, everything up to the city code. Now, the fire chief, thanks so much to provide the downtown. But you got to think about it, yes. How the idea is, you think of the first floor started fire. Can I ask you something? You think of the fire, what's the last fire in the downtown, the Hot Springs? I believe our search is like a 1930s, something like that. I think about this, since 1930s, the electrical meter and the equipment is so much improved than before. And plus, yes, I believe it's like a year 2000, we have the fire in the downtown, which is not starting the first floor. I think it's starting in the ground floor. So why you want us put in the first floor first before anybody put in the sprinkler system? There's first things. Secondly, and I did ask a city code Mike. I said, Mike, what the state code is? Mike says state code doesn't have sprinkler system require putting anything in the second floor. If you want to develop a third floor, you have to put in sprinkler system on it. Why we want to go beyond the state code? This second thing. And third thing I want to ask is, I know, human life is more important. And look, we have almost 70 people in this building meeting right now. We don't have sprinkler system on it. You think that the building is more important than the human life is? I don't get it. And the whole idea is also I got to think about how much money we bring to the building rent. And you want me putting $80,000 in this building, nobody can afford it. I have to double the rent, and I guarantee the building in the downtown will be look like a 1980s. Like I was coming, half the stores closed, and another 5 years later, everybody like Majestic Hotels. It's a major fire. It's not like you think about the sprinkler system can stop. And the sprinkler system slow down the fire and stop the path to next buildings. Really main idea is save the people's life. But how much fire in the Hot Springs, the building, people die in the fire in the human, just residential home. And I want you to think about this. Do you want to require anybody in the home have the sprinkler system on there or not? Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. I just from hearing everything, and I've had a lot of phone calls also and talked to a lot of people. It seems like I would really like to table this at least long enough so that we can have some community meeting and information. I think information permits progress, and when they don't have time to really sort out everything. It's big, it's huge. Most of us are not technical, but I don't know how y'all feel, but I just feel like we should table it until the community has a chance to really have maybe an open meeting.
Do we have any more speakers?
No, that was it.
Can we ask Chief?
Yes,
Davis?
you may. Yeah, right.
And I have a letter that I need to read when you get through.
Okay, we'll take all that, but Chief Davis, would you please come back for questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Can you clarify, because the last speaker mentioned that we were going beyond the state code, and it had been my understanding that if this isn't adopted, that there will be more stringent requirements on the property owners, that this was an exception that was being given to Hot Springs because of the historic buildings. Now, if it's adopted, it is going to require in the buildings that had previously been identified as unsafe to have fire sprinkler system. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. To say that we're an exception might be too strong, but what we're doing is we are the first community that the State Fire Marshal is allowing to adopt the existing building code. In other words, the special code for the rehabilitation of existing and historic structures. It's not been done here, and he's allowing us to do that.
But if we don't adopt that, you will have to enforce stricter.
Yes, ma'am. We'll have to
code.
enforce the building code, Volume 2.
So either way, whether it's adopted or not adopted, is our
The bottom line on it is the new code goes in on January 12th. January 1st. It's the 2012 International Building Code and 2012 International Fire Code. And those things will be enforced. The state legislature has adopted those. And so the fire code calls for all vertical shafts in the buildings of 3 to 5 stories and above to be enclosed with 1 hour enclosures. We'll be sending out letters telling people that have those vertical shafts in their building to enclose them. Now, that's not Ed Davis's words. That's what the state legislature adopted.
So it's not the city adopting the code. We have to comply with the state requirements.
Yes, ma'am. The city is we're wanting to adopt a lesser code,
And
a
that's
code that's less
unusual.
stringent. And we've got the state's permission to do that. The bottom line on it is that, I've struggled with this, guys. I'll just tell you, I've had a lot of nights where I've stayed up and looked at it. I have a responsibility to be the conscience of the city of Hot Springs regarding fire safety. And I'm coming by and I'm telling you we should not allow unsafe buildings to remain unsafe. We wouldn't do it at Hot Springs Mall. We wouldn't do it at Central City. We wouldn't do it at Kroger. We wouldn't do it at Walmart. We wouldn't do it at any of these places. And we shouldn't be doing it downtown. That's wrong. It's one of those deals to where that we should not be given special dispensation to say you can just do whatever you want to do. The code clearly says a lack of means of egress, whether the building is occupied or not, is moot. A lack of means of egress means that it is unsafe. So the bottom line is, I'm just delivering the message to you. And this is an issue of conscience. And I have fought with myself over this issue and went back and forth, tried to figure out a way to do it without using the force of law. There's no way. It cannot happen without the force of law. It does take us having the guts to say, we are going to do something about these unsafe buildings. And that's really the bottom line. And if you don't adopt it tonight, it doesn't matter anyway. The letters are going out the first week of January, folks. This is Arkansas state law. This is not something Ed Davis just pulled out of the air and said, hey, let's just do this. It is what it is. And I'm supposed to be your conscience. I'm here telling you that. And people don't like that. I understand that. I'm not saying it's not going to be a hardship. It is going to be a hardship. But there are ways that we can work with folks and try to bring about the best possible outcome to where people don't lose their businesses. And, the thing about it is, folks, I love Hot Springs. I've lived here my entire life, and I don't want to do anything to harm it. I want to see it grow, and I want to see it be better. And, if someone owns buildings downtown and they don't want them to be occupied, well, they can be unoccupied with a sprinkler system and proper means of egress. That's the property owner's right if they don't want the building occupied. All I can tell you is we're going to enforce the code. And that is the bottom line on it. And, I love and respect y'all, and I love and respect the people in the audience, and I don't want to harm anybody. I have a job to do, and I do intend to do it.
Chief, if we did nothing tonight, and as you said, the letters are going out, I guess January 2nd, notifying property owners of the new code that was adopted by the state legislature. What's the time frame for compliance with that new code?
Well, it's just like with anything else. We're always going to try and work with people. We're going to give them 6 months increments to try and get together a 6 month increment to get a plan together first. And then compliance at 6 month intervals, because we understand that this is not an easy thing.
Now, that's with the code that would be adopted, or
no, it doesn't matter whether the code's adopted or not. That's what we're going to do on this deal. And dealing with the issues of the unsafe buildings downtown, we are going to notify the property owners, 6 months to come up with a plan to deal with the problems of the buildings unsafe. That's really the bottom line.
So regardless whether it's this before us tonight or what comes into effect on January 1, regardless of what we do tonight, you provide that 6 months to put a plan together. And because I think in your earlier presentation to us, I guess a week ago at the agenda meeting, did I not hear that it was like a 6 months to put a plan in and then a couple years to get it implemented?
Yes, sir. But we will go in 6 month benchmarks to make sure people are making progress. But yes, sir, it'll be a 2.5 year process.
And is that a similar process if we did nothing tonight and you were monitoring the January 1 code?
Yes, sir.
Going into, okay.
The only issue with not passing this is that it makes the application of the existing building code an arbitrary thing. If you pass the thermal basin code tonight, that means that in January, first week of January, by law, you have said, Ed Davis, make sure that when you refer this over to code, that they use the existing building code to deal with the problems in this building. Otherwise, we're going to be dealing with the building code, volume 2 of Arkansas Fire Prevention Code to deal with these problems. And as I explained to you earlier, that is going to be a much more expensive process.
For the property owner.
For the property owner.
And to the point about the water main and the side of the street, isn't there something planned?
Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah, I wanted to make a couple of comments. One, I would supplement Jim Fram's comment by saying that I think the community is fortunate to have someone as knowledgeable about fire codes as Ed Davis. This is a very complex issue. Cities were formed 1,000 years ago in Greece to protect public safety. And so public safety is our number one concern. I think that in an effort to try to mitigate the economic burden placed on property owners, along with the responsibility all property owners have for life safety, we have tried to develop a plan where we would work with property owners downtown to try to make this a win-win if possible. I think Anthony Taylor and Bob Kimkus are good examples of how the city worked with the property owner wanting to adhere to the new code requirements that we have to implement. And I think that worked out well. Now, how does that benefit the people in the audience? I think the gentleman who owns the French Quarter brought up the fact that we were not able or willing at that point to run a parallel line on the east side of Central, thus passing the burden of doing that on to him, which in addition to sprinkling the building would be onerous. So we have been able to get permission from the city attorney that if we utilize water utility funds for life safety improvements, not economic development, but life safety, if we can use utility funds to protect a huge economic and historical investment in this community, i.e. downtown, then what we plan on doing is working with property owners. We will put in a parallel line in the parking area on Central. And if and when you put in your sprinkler, you'll have the water main that we're going to put in to connect into. We're not requiring you to put in that water main. That's a significant cost that the utility is going to bear. So I think what we're trying to do, dealing with a message that's pretty tough, because it has to be, is we're trying to provide a carrot. How can we make this affordable? I think you've heard tonight that there may be ways that the private sector, our banks, or the public sector, CDBG or new market tax credits or what have you, could be a means to ease that financial burden. We as a utility are making an investment to help ease the pain of hooking into the city water utility. I think everyone would benefit if this plan is being implemented or will be implemented over a reasonable period of time. In other words, on January 1, you don't have to have a sprinkler.
No.
But on January 1, we need to make you aware that if your building is unsafe, not every building in the thermal basin is unsafe. So we're talking about a finite number. We will work with you to conform to that code. And so in that regard, it's a cooperative type venture, and that's something that I've really tried to promote.
Yes, sir.
Chief, first of all, I'm sorry that you're having to be the messenger of the state legislature's actions that essentially force everybody to comply with the new code, and the effort that you have made to mitigate the impact and reduce the cost on these building owners is absolutely not noticed in all this discussion. So I appreciate the work that you have done. Are single-story structures also subject to this?
The vast majority of single-story structures within the thermal basin are completely exempt from it. In fact, most of the 2 stories are. It's the 3 stories and above that have always been problematic in Hot Springs. And, you know, there are only actually 24 buildings in this area that have unsafe conditions. So, you know, out of the vast majority of multi-story buildings, which there's about 74 of them, 75 of them in the thermal basin, only 24 have issues. Not all of those multi-stories are going to have huge issues as far as the expense of a fire protection system. Many of them have some existing infrastructure in them that can be used for a sprinkler system. In other words, like a standpipe system or something like that that can be used to carry water on it. So, you know, from that standpoint, we're not talking about the vast majority of businesses within the thermal basin. We're not even talking about the vast majority of multi-stories. We're just talking about those that the owners made a decision to board it up and not to try and comply with the codes. That's really the bottom line on it. But as far as like the state legislature, the fire service in the state of Arkansas, you know, the building officials and many folks are the ones that recommended this to the state legislature. You have to look at Little Rock as the example. Little Rock, you know, 15 years ago had the same kind of problem we do with a lot of unsafe buildings. Little Rock adopted some codes and began to clean them up. And so, you know, 15 years from now, I'm hoping that downtown Hot Springs is going to be vibrant, alive, and, you know, economically wonderful as downtown Little Rock is now. Those of you that were in downtown Little Rock 15 years ago know the problems that they were dealing with. It does take code officials and fire officials saying we're not going to allow it to continue to remain in an unsafe condition. And that's one of the reasons why the portions of the fire and the building code are more stringent now than they were in 2006 when we adopted the last one. It is the fire service of the state of Arkansas. It is the code officials that are the ones that pushed a lot of this. So, you know, although the state legislature approved it, you can put some of the blame on people like me. And that's just as honest as I can be about that.
So in these buildings that we have, I don't understand the logic of requiring a sprinkler system on the upper levels when we don't require a sprinkler system on the first level, especially since fire rises.
Yes, sir. Well, the entire building would have to be sprinkled. I mean, you would have to sprinkle the entire building.
No, I'm talking about a single-story structure standing next to a multi-story structure.
Well, the fire load within a single-story structure is not as great, and there are not channels, staircases, vertical shafts that would allow that fire to be able to run floor to floor. There's no fire load above it. And a single-story structure is pretty easy to deal with from a fire protection standpoint. You have to remember, though, if we had single-story structures that have been declared unsafe, we would be dealing with them in the same manner. But we do not have any single-story structures downtown that I know of that have been declared unsafe.
Okay.
It's much easier to remodel and to bring it into compliance with code.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, go ahead. There was some questions about what the safe and sanitary definitions are, and would it be a problem to add into this somewhere, if it's requiring fire sprinkling, that be included in there, or a definition somewhere?
It is included within the building code and also within the existing building code, the requirements for fire sprinklers. They're written out in there in detail. The reason why you adopt a code is so that all of those entries that would apply to making a building safe are listed in there. It's a convenience issue for being able to have that document accessible to you. In other words, you could pick it up and you can look at all of the different applicable codes for different occupancy classes. But not all buildings within the thermal basin are going to have to be sprinkled, guys. Only those that are unsafe, only those 24 that we're talking about, and it's only to bring them back into a safe condition. If you have a 2-story building and say that building has been arbitrarily, it's been declared as an unsafe building, you go back and you look at it. There are ways to make a 2-story building safe without having to sprinkle it. There's actually ways to make a 3-story building safe without having to sprinkle it. You turn it into a single-family dwelling. Single-family dwelling can be 3 stories and not have to have a fire sprinkler system. However, though, whenever you go into occupancy classifications such as assembly or mercantile or business, when you begin to go up in those upper stories, then you have to have a sprinkler system on it. If you go in and you turn it into a motel or apartments, it would have to have a sprinkler system in it. Why? Because it's a change of occupancy. When you change occupancies, you have to meet the requirements of the code, or in a situation where the building has been declared unsafe, a fire sprinkler system's addition is the way to cover a lot of sins within that building.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
So according to what Mr. Fram was saying, under the historic preservation laws or rules or
guidelines,
there could be a lot of money given. They wouldn't have to borrow all this money and use tax credits the way the Historic Preservation Fund is set up. Used to be, I'll say it that way.
Yes, ma'am.
So a lot of those 24 buildings could get loans or get monies to rehab it.
Yes, ma'am. My awareness on that is pretty limited, but yes, ma'am, that is what I've been told.
Okay.
And one of the other issues for this that's important to remember is the Thermal Basin District in its formation will allow us to have the Thermal Basin District be eligible for new market tax credits. That's one of the reasons why you want to see the Thermal Basin District created, so that we could go to the state and say, we're taking this action to be able to preserve these buildings. Will you make new market tax credits available to these folks just based on being in the district? And initially, they've replied back in the affirmative that they will do that. So, you know, what are new market tax credits? Well, they're used to build steel mills and sawmills and things like that all around the state of Arkansas. And so we hope to use the Thermal Basin District to be able to capture that money to bring it back to hometown Hot Springs and use it for revitalization of buildings.
There's 2 issues in historic preservation. One is the historic tax credits, because they're a historic building. They'll already be eligible for that. And those are run through Arkansas Historic Preservation. Yeah. Secondly are the grants that historic preservation allows, but those are a little more difficult because you have to follow very strict guidelines. But historic preservation folks have already said, when this sort of came up, they said they would be willing to come down here, hold workshops, whatever was necessary.
See, I should have just deferred it to you right off the bat.
Do what?
I should have just deferred that question to you right off the bat.
I just sort of expressed that at the last Arts Council meeting. So,
I would highly, highly recommend that we could have a town hall meeting with all the people, not just the owners, but the people who occupy and have the stores. Because, again, I didn't know. We took it off last time because I said it's kind of like we got to vote for it to find out what's in it, and I think that's the way a lot of them are feeling. You don't know what's in it. How big is the code? How many pages?
Well,
talking about
the existing building code is about that thick.
About that thick.
The building code itself is that thick. So do you want a document this big or this big applied to your building? That's a question.
Yeah. And so I just feel like communication is what, like the gentleman said on December the 6th was the first time he got the notice. And I'm thinking we have got to communicate. I didn't understand it. I've been asking questions. And I'm sure if I owned a building there, I'd be asking more questions because it really affects, not just the public building, but the private person who has to live with the funding. And maybe some people can't get those funding. So I would highly recommend that we have a meeting with you and with the property owners and with architects and contractors maybe and bankers and have that as soon as possible after the first of the year. I mean, can we say we'll have a meeting? Is that okay?
Well, it's the board's pleasure, whatever the board wants to do.
Yeah, but I'm asking you if you will come meet with us.
January 2nd, the letters go out.
Yeah, no matter what happens on January 2nd, we still need to understand what happened that's been mandated from the state. We need to understand that. We don't need to just, and if we can have more of that information, at least if there's nothing we can do about the government, at least we can understand it. And it's like light bulbs coming on. Oh, well, that's what they meant. It helps to understand what's going on. Yes, sir.
Madam Mayor, I'm concerned that by forcing the fire chief to send out letters, he has to send them out in the tone of complying with the building code, which is a lot more restrictive than this code that he is proposing.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think we do a real disservice to both the downtown owners as well as the renters in that area. I don't have a problem with a joint meeting to discuss how we can move this through and help people as much as we can. But we're required, first of all, we don't have a choice. We do not have a choice to say to him, don't enforce the code.
Oh, that's not what I was doing. That's not it.
And when he does go out with it, he's going to come out with a much more onerous letter that puts the building owners really in a bind. And so I'd like to just call for the question on the motion that's on the floor.
Well, that's what we were going to do, but I wanted to make everyone aware that we do care, and we're not here just to tell you what to do. If it's been mandated from somewhere beyond us, we'll go ahead and vote for what it is, but we won't leave you hanging all alone out there wondering what in the world just happened. So,
May I ask
yes.
one question, Mayor? Chief, if there's no action taken tonight on this proposed ordinance, what happens to the current city vacant structure code?
The city vacant structure code, that's a good question. Will stay in place.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll have to come back with something first meeting in January to tear it down completely.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. What just happened? The vacant structure code is completely different?
No, ma'am. The City of Hot Springs has a vacant structure code in place. What this would do would be to change the vacant structure code. If you take no action tonight, the vacant structure code stays in place. There would be no letters that go out on January 1, 2014 until you repeal that.
So what are you saying now?
What happened?
Yeah, there would actually be a conflict between state fire code and vacant building code. I'm going to fall on the side of the state of Arkansas, not on the side of the city of Hot Springs on this. As the fire chief of the city of Hot Springs, I have to be loyal to the state of Arkansas and the fire code and what it says. And the letters will go out. It does trump local law. It would make it a lot easier and much less confusing if we did vote for this tonight. It is a situation to where that we're only talking about removing the vacant building code in the Thermal Basin Fire District. It will still apply to the rest of the city, but it is a situation to where the vacant building code is problematic in many, many ways and is a very poor code.
So the bottom line is we would not be in compliance with the state.
From my standpoint, we would not, but I am not an attorney, and I would have to defer to Brian and say, Brian.
You have adopted two codes. One makes an exception to the other. That's an issue for me to try to enforce it. He can write all the citations, but I'm going to have to enforce it. So y'all got to decide what you're going to do.
Okay, well, what are you saying, that we have to nullify the one that we have before we can adopt another one so that we won't have two codes?
This ordinance would amend it so that it only applies to residential and single family and duplexes, residential structures. I'm just simply saying that if you do want to have more time to get more citizen input, to learn more about it, I don't have a problem with that because you've got two laws that on the books right now that are in conflict with each other anyway.
In addition, we wouldn't be in compliance with what the state code goes into effect.
Right. You have adopted that state code as your building code, but you also have a vacant building code. You have,
but it wouldn't be in compliance.
And the vacant structure code says that if it's vacant and if it meets all the criteria and it's been boarded and secured. I don't agree with the vacant structure code, but that's what's been on the books in the city of Hot Springs for years.
So that's in conflict.
And it has been carved out as an exception to the state code, which you have adopted by reference.
So, question. Pat, don't look at me like that.
I'm not looking at you anyway. I'm just thinking.
After he send out his letters, with us having already adopted the other code, those letters will be just in the sky somewhere, right?
Until you do something with the vacant structure code, Don Schnipper's going to tear me up in court.
If you vote for this tonight, though, it nullifies the vacant structure code within inside the Thermal Basin
True.
Fire District.
That is true.
And state code clearly says that in situations where there is problems between the two codes, the most stringent requirement does apply.
That's what this one says.
Yep.
Having spoken on this subject, can I ask a few questions? Chief, the number of structures that are governed by this code is what?
Multi-story structures, it's 74.
Thermal basin, 74.
Yeah, multi-stories.
Of the multi-stories. Of those 74, 24 are considered
unsafe.
So approximately a third.
Yes, sir.
So we're talking about a minority of the buildings. Now, they might be, from a square footage standpoint, it might be real significant.
Right. There are hundreds of other buildings, though, within the thermal basin, single stories and 2 stories, that are not within that count. Then none of those buildings are unsafe.
I understand, because you said,
yes, sir.
You mentioned Quapaw Prospect area, and there's residential there, and they're not part of that count.
Yes, sir, that's right.
And up Park Avenue in Whittington, or where the boundaries were. You know, when I came into this, I was like, I had a hard time getting my hands around this, because I've received some phone calls, and the more I've heard tonight, the more I'm getting comfortable with this. And I'm getting comfortable because we're going to come under some law on January 1st. Now, this vacant structure thing, that would be taken care of with the passage of this, and it would allow, because without passing it or moving it, if we went to this other law that's going to be in effect on January 1st anyways, I guess a landlord could say, well, I'll just board it up. The tenant on the first floor will be out, and then I'll just stand back and declare vacant structure.
It's likely to happen if you don't pass this.
And that's no good either. And then I sit here and I go, okay, we got property rights. You know, that owner has property rights. And I struggle with that. At the same time, I'm sitting here going, you know, if I have a historic structure in the middle of Hot Springs, does the community have some say in that? Maybe not in a court of law, but, you know, I'm sitting here going, if this whole town burned down, and we can all say, well, we haven't had a fire since 1930. Yeah, we didn't have a flood out on the Red River that took lives either. You know, West Arkansas a few years back, and now they have sirens. And we're putting sirens in the city of downtown Hot Springs. We haven't had a loss of life, perhaps. Maybe I don't recall. But we're putting sirens there to be safe. And we're doing our part in getting the water mains there. We heard testimony from one individual who had it put in his structure, and it created great opportunities, more employment. I've had people tell me that they would buy a loft in downtown Hot Springs.
I have too.
I mean, I think this downtown area is going to pop. And I think, but I'm not in their shoes. I can't do their business plan for them. But I think we've seen some activity down there that would suggest that there are great possibilities there. So I'm, you know, to the people that called me, I respect them. I've got a comfort level. I'll sleep tonight passing this, or voting the way I vote on this.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I promised these people that I would submit this for the record. From Dear Chief Davis, first, the members of the Whittington Valley Neighborhood Association want to express our gratitude for the professionalism of your department. We recognize that in any emergency, your department is first on the scene, tackling often difficult and dangerous conditions to save lives and protect property. We owe you and those working in your department a debt of gratitude for your continued service to the city and our neighborhood. At the October meeting of our members, we considered the issue of fire safety in and around Hot Springs. One topic our members discussed was the recent 100th anniversary of the fire of 1913, a conflagration that burned half of the city and forever changed our community. While there have been many significant improvements in fire safety since 1913, the fact remains that Hot Springs is especially susceptible to widespread fire damage, especially in and around the downtown area. Large portions of our central city are surrounded by rugged forests, and while these forests are beautiful, they could, under dry or drought conditions, allow a fire to quickly spread to multiple neighborhoods. Also, there is a high concentration of older wooden structures in close proximity in and around downtown. This adds to the possibility that a fire could quickly encompass multiple structures and lead to widespread damage and loss of life. Finally, the number of abandoned and in some cases crumbling structures in and around downtown only increases the fire danger. To address these issues, your department has proposed creating a thermal basin fire district. Within the district, excluding single-family homes and duplexes, all currently vacant or unsafe buildings would be required to install fire suppression equipment such as sprinklers to mitigate fire risks. Equally important, the proposed thermal basin fire district does not require that our older historic buildings be retrofitted to meet modern fire standards. Our older buildings do not have to sacrifice their historic features to be made safe. That means that varnished woodwork, glass transoms, and other architectural features which otherwise would not be allowed under the current fire code can remain in place. Overall, the proposed thermal basin fire district strikes a fair balance of providing enhanced public safety by reducing the risks posed by fire without imposing undue regulatory burdens on property owners. At our October meeting, our members voted unanimously to support your efforts to create a thermal basin fire district. And again, thanks to you and your department. Signed, Mark Toth, President, and John Lewis, Vice President. Thank you.
Chief, is this just Central Avenue? Is that, or does it go on any of the other
Bring the
sides?
map back up.
Yeah, hang on one second, Chief. I'll get you.
It goes up into Park and Woodington.
It's not just Central Avenue. Let me just describe the meets and bounds to you. On the southern portion, it is bordered by Grand Avenue, East and West Grand. It starts at where Prospect intersects Grand, and then it begins to go east. It will pass Central, Malvern, and then go to Gorge Road, where it will terminate. It will begin to go north up Gorge Road to Park Avenue, then through Stonebridge, and then connect with the existing city limit line and follow that all the way back around to Prospect again. And one of the reasons why that we have included this area is because of the great threat from fire. I mean, from my standpoint, I think we have a larger threat from wildland fires than we do even from fires in the buildings. That's why that at some point in time in the future, after you adopt this, we'll be bringing to you certain wildland urban interface measures to try and reduce the risk to fire to those structures coming in from the wildlands. This is a multifaceted district that we're trying to propose, and it's there simply for the fact that there are special fire needs in this area. Also special needs as far as like trying to gain monies for historic structures, trying to gain new market tax credits. We're in the process of trying to set up a brownfield revolving fund with a couple of the banks here to provide basically a fund to be able to help downtown folks when they go to remodel a building to remove their asbestos. Do it in a way that would be provide low interest loans and things like that. So there's a lot of things that are going on this right now, and it's one of the compelling reasons to have the thermal basin district is not just life safety, but also being able to apply for grants, being able to apply for loans based on the inclusion in the thermal district.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
you know, Mr. Fram woke me up, and then here come Pat. He woke me up too.
You've been sleeping over there?
Yes, I have been
Oh, my
asleep.
goodness.
Sometimes I don't understand all these technical that stuff y'all talk about. But I know about the historic preservation because I've taken classes back in the day, and I know there's money available.
Yes, ma'am.
And it would help the poor folks
Yes, ma'am.
If you got money, you're not going to be able to get any help from the historic preservation, but you can get tax credits. I know that much.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to support this, and to you who thought I was going to vote the other way, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going the other way.
Well, we're glad you woke up.
I know it. It was time.
Okay.
Mr. I would like to ask Mr.
question.
Watkins.
Yes, ma'am.
If is adopted, if I still have concerns for the small business owners that may be impacted, is there something that could be coordinated to get education and this information?
What I would propose is, if this passes, that we would have the fire department
Does that mean
and our building codes department meet with property owners, tenants, architects, contractors, bankers, residents, and kind of go through the mechanics of what this code requires. And, we've got some very capable architects in this community, several of whom I know pretty well, who deal with this all the time. And so I think there's an educational curve that we have to address. And I think that's why adopting this lesser code gives Ed and his staff more flexibility, more time to work cooperatively with building owners, as opposed to just nasty letter, you got 2 months, get it done. We're not taking that heavy-handed approach. We're taking the how can we get this done approach.
Working together.
Working together, not just using a hammer.
Okay. Yes, sir.
In that same vein, is it possible that we could offer some of the expertise from our purchasing departments when these owners have to put sprinkler systems in, for example, to the extent that we could consolidate the purchase of those sprinkler systems with multiple owners, we could probably help drive a lot of savings by volunteering some of our time to at least oversee a bidding process that would get best price for these owners too.
Yeah, I think here again, I think the community is fortunate that we have a fire chief and a fire marshal who are extremely well versed in this particular code. And so any expertise we can provide to help economies of scale, joint purchasing, joint design, I mean, we will do that.
Okay.
And the city of Hot Springs has committed infrastructure improvements within this area to be able to get the buildings that are affected the water that they need to be able to support fire sprinkler systems. And that's something Mr. Watkins has said on many times, that the city of Hot Springs is going to support this. I know in the case of the Rolando's Speakeasy that was opened up, we saved the property owner approximately $20,000 in the things that we did, and we improved fire safety in that area. We've got greater fire flow now for fire in other buildings, and we provided them with the building, with the water to be able to make their building safe through sprinklers. So it is a thing to where that we, once we get to the point that we begin the rubber hitting the road on this, the city has committed itself to infrastructure improvements to help these folks. Right. And Mr. Fram has committed himself. We've got several bankers that have committed themselves to help with the process of establishing the Brownfield Revolving Fund. So, we have people that are interested in this and want to see this work. And, I can tell you that the last thing that I want to see happen is the city of Hot Springs or its merchants harmed. What I want to see is everybody get to a place to where you're safe, and that we can make the town, well, if in the process of making it safe we can make it more economically viable, then so be it.
Okay, so in this vote that we're just about to do,
I have one comment, and I have had, as we all have had, several phone calls. As a small business owner, I leased the property that I had my business in, and I took care of the interior, made it nice looking, but anytime anything large happened to the building itself, was the responsibility of the people that owned the building. And we've heard it tonight, and some of the concerns were from some of the long-established business owners is that their landlord says, I'm not doing it. It's your deal. And they don't own the building. They just happen to be tenants. So I know you will work with Mr. Albright and the state code and so on, whatever we need to do. But I hate to see them pushed out, or anything like that.
Okay, I would just like to clarify, just so that we'll emphasize that this is a state-mandated code that will go into effect, and by our vote, we just affirm that code that's going to happen anyway. Is that what we're doing? No.
Ma'am, you're adopting an alternative to that code that's less stringent.
Okay. January 1st, though, you said this was the state fire code.
It's state fire code, yes, ma'am. It's the 2012 Arkansas State Fire Code, volumes 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. So it's there, mandated by the state, that this is the fire code, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So.
And we're coming in with a substitute.
And we're coming in.
With the permission of the state fire marshal, we are coming in with a less stringent code. And if we didn't have his permission to do it, we could not do that. But we are the first city that he is allowing to adopt the existing building code to apply it to historic structures.
Okay.
And I've got the letter in case you need to see it. So.
You don't need to restate anything. Okay. Just want to make it real clear what we're going to do before anybody votes. So
yes,
that's okay. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Garcia.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Davidson.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
Carney.
Aye. And I want to also make it clear that we will work together with the city manager, Mr. Fram, the chief, and have a meeting that you are well informed of, that we're going to plan this meeting so that you can come and all of the details, any of the questions, any of the concerns that you have, and also the possibilities for funding and assistance in making this happen. Yes, sir?
Mayor, will the people that's affected by this be notified by letter as we have been before?
Yes, and maybe if it would be better to notify, maybe even put it in the newspaper or have it announced some other way so that you'll know that that meeting's coming up and when it's going to happen. Sir?
Ma'am, we'll send out letters to the property owners like we already have.
Okay.
And the property owners will be notified.
And give them sufficient time to be able to make that meeting, so that.
Chief, I would recommend that we really move quickly with that meeting to provide whatever information. So if we can do it in the month of January, that would.
Yes, sir. It will happen in January. I promise you that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And then if anybody else wanted to attend, we can just make the public announcement that that meeting's going to happen. Okay. So we'll have a date set. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I think without having a public hearing and proper notification, and this not being, in my personal opinion, fair and equitably distributed downtown, that y'all should listen to the people because they put you in this chair to represent them and protect them. Remember that. Protect the people. There will be a turnover downtown. Things are going to progress when you start telling people what you've got to do. And if the legislature did, so be it. But once we modify it and property owners are begging you, please don't do this, there's got to be a logical rationale. If it's to their benefit, then why are they opposed to this? You've got to have the money up front before you get the tax credit. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next item on the agenda is Board of Directors comments. Do you have any?
Did we vote? Yeah.
Yes, we did. We did vote. Right? It passed. Yes. Okay. I do want. Yes, ma'am.
For comments?
Yes.
I just wanted to remind everybody to shop Hot Springs. Next week is Christmas. We've heard from some business owners, and I strongly encourage our citizens to shop Hot Springs and keep our money reinvested in Hot Springs. I also wanted to
Excuse me, would you please leave quietly?
Also wanted to thank the city management and staff for all of the work hours that went into preparing the budget that we approved this evening. I'm sorry Economics didn't provide for pay raises for employees that earned them. And with all of us working together, I know that we can improve our economic conditions in the future. And lastly, I wanted to thank the Women of Prayer for all of the beautiful Christmas cards, and thank you.
Okay. Did you have one? No, you opened your mouth. I thought you were going to speak.
Joe's standing back there.
Okay, one of the, we got an invitation by Judge Davis and for our team here to visit the jail and go have a tour either tomorrow morning or Thursday morning, and he wanted us to respond to as when it's best for us to go see what's already been accomplished out there.
Thursday.
Is Thursday good?
What time were you?
9:30.
Pardon?
9:30. There's a metropolitan planning. No. What is it? Metro partnership meeting at 8. It's usually over at 9. So around 9:30 at the jail site. Is that okay?
I said no.
You
I
can't.
I told Sheila I couldn't.
Me too. Oh, you can't be there on Thursday? Could you be there on Wednesday? No, not Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday at all.
This notice.
No. Pardon?
She
just sent it out She just sent it out this evening.
Oh, I didn't know that Sheila sent it out.
She sent it out.
Anyway, those of you who can.
Are you talking about Thursday, Mayor?
Thursday at
Okay,
9:30.
great.
Is that
I'll
okay?
do Thursday.
Just
yeah.
meet out at
there.
the site?
Yes. Mhm.
Thursday at 9:30.
Just a tour. You can do it some other time if you can't do it then, but he wanted to be able to take us through it. All those that are possible.
You'll be impressed.
Yeah. 9:30.
What time?
9:30 Thursday.
And how long?
Big green tractor.
I don't know.
2
It shouldn't-
hours.
2
max.
hours?
That's what he said.
Okay.
Hour and a half, maybe.
2 hours. Okay.
He gonna give you lunch? I'll go.
No food. You have to take your own sandwich.
Brown bag.
Brown bag it.
Orange
Okay.
bag.
Oh, okay. He just don't want it to be a brown bag.
Joe, did you want to speak?
I think so.
Or Penny? Either one of you? No. I know you didn't sign up, but I thought maybe you wanted to. Okay. Is there any other comment? Okay, this concludes the business section, and immediately following adjournment of tonight's business meeting, there will be a public comment section here in the board chambers, so hang with us a few minutes while that transition happens. Is there any further business? Hearing no further business, would you?
I move that we adjourn.
And is there a second? We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. And we will wait just a few minutes for the public comment section.